Fake passport again. The words exploded like a gunshot across the immigration hall. Officer Hale slammed the document tray forward, and with a flick of his lighter, the small navy booklet went up in flames. Paper curled, edges blackening, ashes lifting into the filtered air of Terminal 4. Passengers froze. A mother clutched her daughter's shoulder. A man in line whispered, "Did he just burn her passport?" The hiss of fire drowned out the usual airport hum, and at the center of it she stood, a black woman in a fitted navy suit, shoulders square, eyes steady, no jewelry, no entourage, nothing to signal who she was, just stillness, just presence. "Step aside, ma'am," Officer Hale barked. His partner Torres echoed him with a smirk. "You're under suspicion. We've seen this scam before." Around them, the line began to splinter. Phones tilted upward. A red recording light blinked. The smell of singed leather from the passport cover seeped into the sterile air, acrid and unmistakable. She didn't flinch. Not when Hale waved the flame inches from her face. Not when Torres reached for the cuffs. Her silence pressed harder than any protest. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to her. Officer Hale leaned in, voice dripping contempt. "This lounge isn't for your kind. We don't let fakes pass through here." His spit almost struck her shoes. Passengers stirred. A teenager whispered, "She gave them her ID. I saw it scan green." His mother pulled him closer. But truth had already leaked into the crowd. Her breath was calm, anchored. She remembered 16 years ago, a hotel in Charlotte, escorted out in her Sunday best. Same words, same look, different uniform. Now, in this terminal, history replayed. But this time, history had chosen the wrong woman. The fire crackled, then died. The last page of her passport split in two, falling into the tray like embers of insult. Hale ground it under his palm as if stamping out her existence. And still, she stood. No movement, no panic, eyes sharp as glass. Passengers were murmuring now, some disgusted, some entertained. One man muttered, "Policy is policy." Another hissed back, "That wasn't policy, that was hate." She adjusted the cuff of her blazer, slow and deliberate, like tightening armor. No words yet, no outburst, just the storm gathering inside her silence. Because in less than 10 minutes, the same officers who mocked her, who burned her proof of belonging, would learn who she truly was. Not just a traveler, not just a black woman, but a CEO whose power could not be torched, and the wife of the Attorney General. The departure board flickered above the immigration hall. Flight 227, boarding in 40 minutes. The line snaked across polished tile, restless travelers dragging suitcases, babies fussing in strollers, business laptops snapping open and shut. It was just another afternoon until it wasn't. At checkpoint 5, the space had collapsed into theater. Officer Hale's outburst hadn't only scorched a passport, it had scorched the air itself. Now the crowd pulsed with whispers and side glances. Phones hovered a little higher. Security cameras whirred silently in their domes, capturing every frame. She stood in the middle of it, a black woman, mid-40 seconds maybe, with a fitted navy suit that caught no attention until now. No flashy handbag, no gleam of diamonds, just a slim leather case and posture carved from discipline. She could have been an accountant, a consultant, a teacher. No one in this terminal would guess her reach stretched across continents. That was the point. Officer Torres adjusted his belt, circling her like a predator who smelled weakness. "Step out of line," he repeated, softer this time but no less sharp. His voice carried the same tone she had heard at 19, when a loan officer called her a risk, despite her perfect collateral. The same tone at 26 when a landlord said, "People like you don't usually rent here." Flashbacks didn't weaken her, they steeled her. She straightened her cuff again, that same slow, deliberate gesture. A man 2 rows back muttered to his wife, "She looks like she belongs more than the officers do." His wife hushed him, eyes darting to the badge on Hale's chest. A teenager lifted his phone higher, red light blinking steady. Torres caught it. "Turn that off. This is official protocol." But the kid didn't lower his hand. Neither did the woman in a headscarf near the stroller. The truth was bleeding into more lenses than he could stop. The crowd wasn't silent anymore. It hummed confusion, unease, rising tension. Even the PA announcement overhead seemed to quiver. "Final call for gate B12. The voice cracked through static like a warning bell. She said nothing. Not yet. Her silence was its own protest, its own weapon. Every second she didn't bend made their authority look smaller, and in that stillness, one thing became clear. This wasn't about paperwork, this was about presence, about a woman who didn't fit the story these officers had written in their heads. But soon, very soon, the script would change hands. The echo of polished shoes cut across the terminal. A new figure pushed through the barrier. Chief of Security. Badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. His presence carried weight, but not fairness. The kind of weight that silences crowds, not protects them. He scanned the scene once, then locked eyes on her. Entry denied. Pending verification. His tone was dry as paper, rehearsed like a line he'd delivered too many times before. A hush swept the queue. Passengers leaned closer. One woman clutched her boarding pass as if she might be next. Officer Hale puffed up, emboldened. "You heard the chief. Denied. Step out now." He kicked the metal tray forward, ashes scattering onto the tiles like confetti of contempt. She didn't move, not an inch. Her chin lifted slightly, not defiant, but steady. A stillness that drew more stares than shouting ever could. Chief of Security folded his arms. "You can cooperate, or we'll make sure you never set foot in this country again." A ripple ran through the onlookers. The teenager with the phone whispered, "That's not policy, that's punishment." His mother tugged his sleeve, but her own eyes stayed locked on the officers. Two travelers whispered in Spanish. She gave them ID. They ignored it. A businessman in line muttered under his breath, "This is going to blow up online." "Ho." Officer Torres stepped closer, voice dripping with mock courtesy. "You're holding up real passengers. Step aside. Real passengers." The phrase hung heavy, a blade wrapped in protocol. Her silence stretched, taut as wire. She glanced at the departure board. Flight 227, boarding soon. The irony wasn't lost on her. They thought time was against her. In truth, time was the fuse burning beneath their feet. The chief leaned closer, lowering his voice but not his hostility. "Ma'am, this is your last warning. Leave quietly. Don't make this harder than it already island." Harder. The word pulsed like static in the air. For her, it wasn't hard at all. She had faced harder at 23, when a bank froze her account for no reason but suspicion. Harder at 32, when a hotel staffer refused her reservation despite her name glowing on the screen. Compared to those, this was theater. Predictable theater. The crowd shifted again, more phones lifted, more eyes sharpening. What had started as humiliation was becoming spectacle, and spectacle was dangerous for the officers. Still, she didn't answer. Not yet. Silence was the rope they were wrapping around their own throats. And as the chief repeated, "Entry denied," the hum of the terminal deepened into something heavier, like the air itself was waiting for the storm she hadn't unleashed. The chief's words hung in the air. Entry denied. Silence followed, but not the silence of surrender. She adjusted the cuff of her blazer again. Slow, deliberate, every movement precise, like a chess player touching the piece she already knew she would move. Her eyes locked on Hale's flame-stained tray, then shifted back to the officers. No trembling, no pleading, just stillness sharp enough to cut. Officer Hale mistook it for hesitation. He smirked. "That's what I thought." His hand hovered near his holster not to draw, just to remind. Theatrics. But the crowd wasn't convinced. A college student, 2 rows back, whispered, "She didn't even blink when they burned it." His phone stayed raised, streaming live. Hearts and angry face emojis fluttered across the screen. A middle-aged woman whispered to her husband, "She looks calmer than they do." He nodded, eyes fixed on the chief, voice low, "Because she knows something they don't." Torres leaned closer, trying to break the spell. "Ma'am, say something, anything, or you're out." His tone carried mock patience, like he was indulging a child. She finally drew breath, steady and deep. When she spoke, her voice was calm enough to chill the air. "Everything I needed to say," she murmured, "is already logged." Hale frowned. "What does that mean?" She didn't explain, didn't need to. The crowd heard the weight in her tone. A ripple passed through them, murmurs, shifting feet, glances at one another. For her, silence wasn't weakness, it was pressure. The kind that builds until walls crack. Behind the barrier, A junior staffer in a pale blue airport vest hesitated. Elena, barely 23, eyes darting between the officers and the woman. She had scanned that passport herself. The system had flashed green. She knew it, and now she knew she was watching a lie unfold in real time. But her supervisor's warning echoed in her ears. "Stay out of trouble, Elena. You're too new." So she stood frozen. For now, Hale snapped his fingers, breaking the moment. Escort team now. But no one moved. Not yet. Even his own colleagues seemed uneasy. Phones kept rising. The audience was no longer just a line of travelers. It was a jury forming in real time. She shifted her stance, heels clicking once on the polished floor. Not loud, but enough. Her eyes swept the room, one calm scan that seemed to mark every witness, every phone, every shaking hand clutching evidence. And when her gaze returned to the chief, the message was clear. You think you control this stage. You don't. The air thickened, heavier than smoke. Every second she refused to flinch was another thread unraveling their authority. The storm hadn't struck yet, but everyone in that hall could feel it gathering. The terminal doors hissed open, and a new authority strode in. The airport security manager, black jacket, radio clipped to his shoulder, face carved from years of unchecked power, his shoes struck the floor like gavels, each step announcing judgment before a word was spoken. He didn't ask what had happened. He didn't look at her documents. He looked only at her, up, down. A pause long enough to carry insult. "Fraud alert," he said flatly into his radio. "Passenger is non-compliant. Possible counterfeit ID." His words echoed through the terminal speakers. A public sentence. Travelers froze mid-step, their eyes snapping toward the checkpoint. The woman's passport ashes still smoldered in the tray. The sight was obscene, yet he pointed to it as proof. "This is what happens when you try to play the system," he declared, loud enough for the entire hall. Phones tilted higher. The live-stream chat on one student's phone scrolled with fury. "That's theft. This is racist as hell. Don't let them touch her." She stood motionless, eyes fixed on him, calm, unshaken. The only part of her that moved was her breath measured, steady, as if she had practiced for this moment her whole life. The manager sneered, mistaking silence for fear. "People like you always think you can outsmart the process, but this gate isn't for everyone. Not today." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman in a headscarf clutched her stroller tighter. A man muttered, "Did he really just say people like you?" His friend pulled out a second phone, hitting record. The young staffer, Elena, flinched. Her fingers trembled near her badge scanner. She had seen the green verification. She had watched the system confirm authenticity. And now her own boss was rewriting reality, word by word, in front of a captive audience. Torres smirked, encouraged. "Manager's orders. Step aside. Real travelers need to get through." That phrase again. Real travelers. Each syllable dripped like acid. The black woman CEO didn't answer. Her silence was louder than their accusations. She shifted her stance, heels grounding against the tile, shoulders set like a mountain against a storm. The manager leaned closer, lowering his voice just enough to sharpen the insult. "This is the end of the line for you. Denied entry. Permanently. If you resist, we'll have you escorted out in cuffs." Cuffs. The word struck the air like a threat of shackles. Several passengers recoiled, whispering furiously. A teenager couldn't hold back. "Her ID scanned green. I saw it." His mother tugged at his sleeve, but her own eyes glistened with anger. The manager snapped his head toward the boy. "Stay out of this, or you'll be detained for interference." The threat was enough to hush him, but not enough to erase the truth. Dozens of phones were still lifted. Dozens of lenses had already caught the words. The fire, the sneer, the humiliation was now public property, and the world was watching. The woman finally moved just one small gesture. She adjusted her blazer, fingers brushing invisible dust from the sleeve. The act was simple, almost mundane. Yet in that moment, it looked like preparation, like a queen tightening her crown before battle. Her eyes lifted to the clock above the gate. 14:17. Time was moving, and so was she. The manager thought he had finished the story with one declaration, "Denied." But in truth, he had just written his own downfall. The security manager's words still echoed when Officer Hale made his move. He reached into the tray where the charred fragments of her passport clung to one another like wounded birds. With a theatrical sneer, he ground them beneath his palm, then lifted the remains high. "This," he shouted, voice booming over the hall, "is what happens to frauds. Consider yourself denied, permanently." He let the fragments fall, drifting like ash across the tile. The crowd gasped, as if watching a verdict handed down without trial. Torres stepped forward, snapping metal cuffs open with a sharp click. The sound echoed through the checkpoint like a blade drawn from its sheath. "Step aside. Last warning. Either you move on your own, or we drag you out." The manager nodded approval. "Escort her out. Make sure she understands we don't tolerate deception." The word deception cut the air. A woman in line hissed, "Deception?" She handed them ID. "I saw it," another man muttered. "This isn't procedure. This is theater." Phones tilted higher. The live stream numbers climbed 1,000, 200, 1,000, 600, 2,000. Hearts and angry faces poured across the screen. Someone typed, "She's not resisting, they're just humiliating her." Through it all, the black woman CEO remained unmoving, her silence pressed like a stone against their shouting. She lifted her chin, eyes steady, and for the first time she spoke above a whisper, "You mistake destruction for authority. But ash don't make you right." The line trembled. Elena, the young staffer, flinched visibly. She remembered the green scan. She remembered the system lighting up valid. Her mouth opened, then closed, her courage fighting fear. Officer Hale smirked, rattling the cuffs. "Save your speeches. This isn't your stage." But the crowd didn't agree. A teenager raised his phone higher. "It is her stage now." His voice cracked, but it carried. A ripple of agreement moved through the travelers. Murmurs hardened into words. "Let her speak. This is wrong." The manager slammed his palm on the counter. "Silence, or you'll all be cleared from this hall." The command backfired. Gasps turned into shouts. "You can't do that! She paid her ticket! We're witnesses!" The energy shifted. What had been a humiliation was becoming a spectacle, and spectacle was slipping from the officer's grip. Hale lunged forward, cuffs ready. "Last chance." But before he could close the distance, she lifted a single hand. Not fast, not panicked, measured, deliberate, as if commanding the room without a word. And somehow, it worked. Hale froze mid-step. The crowd hushed, every phone camera zooming in. Her voice was calm, surgical. "Touch me, and you don't just arrest a woman, you arrest evidence, and evidence has a way of surviving fire." Her words landed heavier than any shout. Even Torres faltered, his smirk fading into unease. The manager growled, trying to reclaim control. "Remove her, now!" But no one moved. Even Hale's grip slackened. The hall was shifting. Authority was cracking. And in that suspended moment, it was clear. The breaking point had arrived. The cuffs still dangled in Hale's hand when she reached into her blazer. No rush, no panic, just one smooth motion. Out came a sleek black phone, its screen already glowing. The crowd leaned in. The manager scoffed, "You think a phone call will save you?" She ignored him. Her thumb pressed a single icon. A secure line pulsed to life, her voice calm but unshakable. "Protocol Aurora 7. Initiate record, geotag, live sync." A crisp female voice answered instantly from the other end. "Recording, activated, transmission secure. Attorney General's office on standby." The words hung like thunder in the hall. Hale blinked. Torres frowned. Even the manager's jaw twitched. The teenager live streaming whispered into his mic, "She just connected to the Attorney General's office. Oh my God." The woman didn't look at the crowd. Her gaze stayed fixed on the officers, steady as a blade. Every second of this is now documented. Every word, every action, logged. Elena, the junior staffer, gasped softly. The green scan she had seen earlier was back in her mind, undeniable. Now, hearing the phrase, Attorney General, her heart pounded. Was this woman who she thought she was? The manager tried to laugh it off, brittle and sharp. Empty threats. "You don't scare me with phone tricks." But his voice betrayed him. It cracked on the word threats. The live stream chat exploded. "She's got government clearance." "Aurora 7? What is that?" "Bro, they messed with the wrong woman." She lifted the phone slightly, speaker on. A new voice cut through, firm and official. "This is the Attorney General's line. Identify the officers on site." The color drained from Hale's face. Torres shifted his weight. suddenly unsure of his stance. The manager swallowed hard, but forced his tone back to steel. "This is still my terminal. She's denied. That's final." The woman lowered the phone just enough for her words to slice the air. "You've mistaken silence for submission. That was your last mistake." The crowd erupted gasps, murmurs, a rising wave of recognition. Phones tilted higher, capturing not just humiliation now, but resistance. And for the first time since the fire began, the officers weren't leading the scene. She was. The Attorney General's voice still echoed from her phone when a smaller voice finally cut through the noise. I scanned her passport. It was Elena, the junior staffer, her pale blue vest trembling against her chest. Eyes wide, voice thin but steadying with every word. It flashed green. Verified. I saw it with my own eyes. The hall snapped to silence. Every head turned. Hale's smirk vanished. Torres froze mid-shift. The manager's jaw clenched, fury rippling across his face. "Young lady," the manager barked, "step back. This doesn't concern you." But Elena didn't move. Her hands trembled, yet her voice rose clearer. "It does concern me. You burned a valid passport. You're lying about the system, and everyone here knows it." Gasps erupted. The crowd surged closer, phones lifting higher. Someone shouted, "She's telling the truth!" Another voice added, "We all saw the scanner flash green." The manager turned crimson. "Enough!" He jabbed a finger at Elena. "You're on probation. One more word and you'll never work in this terminal again." But the threat no longer landed. Elena squared her shoulders, surprising even herself. "Then fire me, but I won't lie for you." The teenager live streaming muttered, "She's a hero," as comments exploded across the screen. "Whistleblower. Protect Elena. Truth always finds a voice." Torres shifted uneasily, eyes darting between the manager and the crowd. His certainty cracked. Hale hissed under his breath, "Shut her up before this spirals." But it was too late. The spiral had begun. Passengers murmured louder now. So the system did clear her. They destroyed evidence. "This is corruption." The woman, calm, immovable, finally spoke, her words razor sharp. "The truth always has a witness, and witnesses multiply." Elena nodded fiercely, tears brimming but resolve unbroken. "You can't erase her twice. Not with me here." The crowd roared, cheers, claps, shouts of agreement. What had been a tense standoff had shifted. The officers were no longer in control. For the first time, the manager's voice faltered. "Stand down," he muttered to his team, though the words lacked conviction. Hale clenched his cuffs, but his hands shook. Torres looked away, sweat gathering at his temple. Authority had cracked, and through that crack, the tide was pouring in. The black woman CEO didn't need to raise her voice. She simply held Elena's gaze, and in that silence was recognition. The baton had passed. The fight was no longer hers alone. The uproar from Elena's defiance still pulsed through the hall when the woman finally stepped forward. Just one pace, enough to shift gravity, enough to silence 100 voices. Her phone remained on speaker. The Attorney General's lines still live. Every word was being logged, time-stamped, preserved. The officers knew it. The crowd knew it. She lifted her gaze to the manager, her tone even yet sharp enough to slice through steel. "You want to know who I am?" The manager smirked, though sweat traced down his temple. "A fraud? A nobody wasting everyone's time?" Her reply came measured, unshaken. "I am not a fraud. I am a black woman CEO. My company operates in 12 countries, employs thousands, and yes, your airport contracts run through me." Gasps rippled across the hall. Phones trembled in their owners' hands. A man in a suit whispered, "She's the Carter Group?" "No way." She wasn't finished. Her voice lowered, deliberate. "And the Attorney General you just mocked, the man whose signature sits on your paycheck, he's my husband." The silence that followed was deafening. Torres's face drained to ash. Hale dropped the cuffs, the clatter ringing like a confession. The manager's mouth opened, then closed, his authority collapsing in real time. Passengers exploded into murmurs. "She's the AG's wife? Oh, they're done. This is history." On live streams, comment floods rolled like thunder. "Plot twist of the century. She's connected at the highest level. They messed with the wrong one." The Attorney General's voice came firm from the phone, filling the space like judgment itself. "Names now." The woman's eyes never left the officers as she answered, "Hale, Torres, and their manager, standing here calling me a fraud." The AG's tone was lethal. "Acknowledged. Actions in motion." The manager staggered a step back. Hale looked around as if for escape. Torres muttered, "Oh, God!" But the woman didn't gloat. She simply stood, poised, unbroken, her calm presence more punishing than fury could ever be. The hall was no longer a checkpoint. It was a courtroom, and she had just revealed herself as both witness and judge. The Attorney General's voice over the speaker cut like thunder through the terminal. Effective immediately. Officers Hale and Torres are suspended. The security manager is relieved of duty. Badge access revoked. Credentials frozen. Document everything for legal review. A hush fell, followed by a crackling gasp from the crowd. The manager blinked, stunned, as if his title might shield him. He reached for his ID card, swiping it against the access reader on the desk. Beep. Red light. Denied. Torres tried his own badge, desperation tightening his jaw. Beep. Red. Finally, Hale shoved forward, swiping with fury, as though sheer force could change fate. Beep. Red. The sound echoed like a funeral bell. Phones recorded every second, every beep. Live stream comments lit up. Justice in real time. They just got locked out live. Red badge equals career over. Hale's bravado crumbled. His grip slackened until the cuff slipped from his hand, clattering to the floor. Torres stepped back, pale, muttering, "This can't be happening." The manager's chest rose and fell, but his authority was gone, stripped in front of strangers and screens. Passengers began clapping tentative at first, then swelling into a tide. The sound filled the hall, applause echoing off glass and tile. What had begun as humiliation had transformed into spectacle, and now into justice. Elena pressed a hand to her mouth, tears brimming. She had never seen power shift so suddenly, so publicly, and she had helped tip the scale. The black woman's CEO did not move, did not raise her voice. Her calm was unshaken. She turned slightly, her eyes sweeping over the fallen officers. "You tried to erase me," she said softly, but the microphones and cameras carried her words across the terminal. "But power doesn't burn, and justice does not forget." The manager lowered his gaze. Hale stared at the floor. Torres closed his eyes, as if willing the moment away. But there was no escape. The judgment had already been delivered, and every witness in that hall knew it. The terminal had transformed into a courtroom without walls. The applause that had erupted moments before still echoed, bouncing off glass and steel, but now it softened into a hush, a reverent pause, as if everyone knew they were witnessing more than a scene. They were witnessing a reckoning. Hale, Torres, and the manager stood hollow, stripped of the swagger that had once filled their uniforms. Their badges, symbols they had brandished like weapons, were now nothing more than dead plastic cards, blinking red against the access scanner. The tiny LED pulsed again and again, each denial like a heartbeat of their collapse. The crowd watched with raw eyes, some with anger, some with awe, all with the certainty that they would carry this story far beyond the walls of Terminal 4. Phones streamed relentlessly, dozens of angles, dozens of voices narrating in disbelief. Hashtags formed live, rolling like wildfire. Number justice, in 10 minutes. Number passport on fire. Number black woman CO. She stood at the center, composed, unshaken. The storm had raged around her, tried to engulf her, and failed. Now, all that remained was her presence, calm, deliberate, undeniable. She stepped closer to the officers. Each click of her heel echoed louder than their shouts had minutes ago. She did not hurry. She did not need to. The silence carried her. When she spoke, the words were measured but carried through the hall like verdicts delivered from the bench. "You thought burning paper would erase me. You thought ashes would mean I didn't belong. But paper does not define truth, and no flame can destroy who I am." Her gaze swept across the hall, meeting eyes one by one, the student live streaming, the mother clutching her daughter, the businessman frozen in awe, Elena still trembling but standing taller than before. Each witness became part of her statement. She continued, "I don't need your validation. I don't need your permission. I am not here to beg for entry. I am the proof that justice walks where it chooses. That dignity is not granted by a stamp or a badge or a uniform. It is lived, it is earned, and it is here." Her words landed heavy, rippling through every corner of the terminal. People nodded, some with tears, others with fists clenched in solidarity. A woman whispered, "That's power." Another said, "She didn't raise her voice once." The officers tried to shrink into the background, but there was no shadow deep enough to hide them. Cameras pinned them under harsh fluorescent lights. Every twitch, every flinch, every line of fear on their faces was captured, broadcast, multiplied. Their humiliation had become permanent record. Elena, her voice shaky but proud, added from the side, "She's right. She belongs here, more than any of them ever did." The crowd applauded again, louder this time, carrying her bravery with it. The black woman's CEO gave a slight nod toward Elena, acknowledgement, gratitude, a passing of strength. Then she turned back to the officers for the last time. "You tried to humiliate me. You failed. You tried to erase me. You failed. But what you really did was reveal yourselves, and now the whole world knows who you are." The silence afterward was total, the kind that presses on the chest. Even the overhead PA system seemed to hesitate before speaking again. Then, as if cued by destiny, the announcement rang out, "Final boarding call, Flight 227. The timing was perfect, inevitable. She lifted her slim leather case from the floor, adjusted her blazer with the same calm precision she had shown from the start, and turned toward the gate. Not escorted, not expelled. Walking with the kind of authority that doesn't need to be announced, it is simply recognized. The crowd parted instinctively, a corridor of witnesses. Phones stayed high, recording every step as applause followed her like a tide rolling forward. Some clapped slow and deliberate, others cheered, a few wept openly. What united them was a sense of release, of satisfaction, of justice finally served. Behind her, the three men stood frozen in disgrace badges, useless, careers in ashes, reputations shredded in real time. No one looked at them anymore. They were background noise to a greater story. At the threshold of the gate, she paused once more, turned, just enough for every camera to catch her face. And with a calm that silenced even the applause, she spoke her last words. "Justice doesn't need to shout. Justice stands, and today, justice stood with me." The terminal erupted. Applause thundered like a storm breaking open. Travelers stamped their feet, voices rose, chants began. Elena clapped until her palms burned. The live stream count shot into the tens of thousands. And then she walked through the gate, vanishing into the boarding tunnel. The hall slowly settled back into its ordinary rhythm, flights announced. Bags rolling, children crying, but nothing felt ordinary anymore. The witnesses knew they had seen something unforgettable. Justice had walked among them, and justice had worn the face of a black woman CEO.